Imagine witnessing your world collapse in the span of 60 seconds, broadcast live before millions who could see every twitch of your expression. That was Queen Camilla's reality when an unforeseen constitutional crisis detonated inside Buckingham Palace, forcing King Charles to abdicate instantly and elevating Prince William to the throne as King William V. Cameras zeroed in on Camilla's face as her reign dissolved in real time. Her complexion drained of all color as the Lord Chancellor read aloud the abdication decree. Her hands shook as she watched her stepson rise and swear the oath that erased her crown in one brutal stroke. This was no gradual shift of power. It was a thunderclap transition, the most violent reshaping of the monarchy in living memory. And for Camilla, it was the televised loss of everything she had fought decades to secure. If you were standing in her place, watching your life's work crumble in front of the world, how would you endure it? Would you fight to reclaim your ground, or accept the cruel twist of fate? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Hit the like button if this moment shook you as much as it did the world, and subscribe for more explosive royal stories where crowns fall, secrets surface, and history is rewritten before our very eyes. The morning itself had begun deceptively calm. October 15, 2024. Charles, ever the dutiful monarch, was at his desk attending to correspondence with quiet diligence. Camilla was dressing for a charity luncheon, selecting her jewelry with the careful polish of a woman who had learned long ago that public image was armor. Prince William, far from the palace, was immersed in environmental summit preparations. But as London stirred awake, shadows were already on the move. At precisely 9, Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary, swept into Charles's study, flanked by the Attorney General, the Lord Chancellor, and 2 senior parliamentarians. Their eyes betrayed urgency. Their presence at such an hour was no mere formality. Sir Clive's words were low, deliberate, and chilling. Credible intelligence indicated a direct threat to the monarchy itself. Foreign and domestic actors were conspiring, with damning documents and classified information ready to be unleashed. The evidence, thick in a folder placed before the king, spoke of financial irregularities and whispered of courtiers turned traitors funneling secrets to hostile networks. The monarchy teetered on the edge of sabotage. Charles pressed for clarity, his voice steady but his pulse quickening. The response was stark. Security services judged the threat critical and immediate. The Prime Minister had been informed. The recommendation was brutal in its simplicity. Abdication, temporary or not, to shield the institution before it could be consumed by scandal. In that instant, Charles's reign of just over 2 years seemed destined for the history books. The man who had waited a lifetime for the throne was being asked to abandon it for survival. The officials left, and Charles sat with the documents that could unravel centuries of continuity. It was irony weaponized. 73 years of waiting, undone in one crisis-laden dawn. Camilla, oblivious, was in her dressing room, brooch in hand, humming faintly as she prepared for her luncheon. She could not know that her crown was slipping through her fingers as advisors stalked the corridors debating mechanisms of succession and damage control. For 3 relentless hours, the palace became a hive of legal and constitutional calculus. Delay risked scandal. Action might preserve legitimacy. The clock was merciless. By mid-morning, Charles knew the burden rested solely on his shoulders. Alone in his study, he weighed loyalty to his wife against loyalty to the monarchy. At 11:45, he sought Camilla, determined to tell her himself before the world did. She looked up at him with warmth that evaporated the second she read his face. He broke the news carefully, explaining the intelligence, the counsel, the impossible recommendation. Her disbelief cracked into horror as he spoke the word, abdicate. Her hands shook, her voice faltered as she asked, "After everything, they want you gone?" Charles's reply was cold reality. This wasn't want, it was necessity. To remain meant dragging the monarchy into ruin. To step aside meant giving it a chance to endure. Camilla rose, pacing furiously. What of her? What of her years of clawing back from public hatred, of becoming queen consort at last, of standing beside him? To be discarded now felt like betrayal itself. She named William with bitterness, invoking his perfection in the public eye, his golden family, the ghost of Diana who would always outshine her. Her words sliced through Charles, but he had no balm to offer. The institution demanded blood, and his crown would suffice. Meanwhile, the machine of monarchy was already in motion. Prince William, in the midst of a heated climate debate with scientists, was discreetly pulled aside by his secretary. The signal was unmistakable: urgent royal business. Within moments, William was en route back to London, his mind racing through grim scenarios. Catherine, too, had been summoned. Husband and wife reunited in the palace corridor, their hands clasping instinctively as if to anchor one another. Neither knew what awaited them, only that it was grave. When the doors opened, they found Charles diminished, his years suddenly visible, the abdication papers spread across the desk like a death warrant. The weight in that room was unbearable, the monarchy itself trembling on the edge of transformation. By noon, the decision was sealed. The world outside remained oblivious as preparations accelerated. Within hours, cameras would roll, the abdication would be read, and William would step into a role for which no amount of grooming could prepare him. And Camilla, once a woman who had clawed her way from scandal into coronation, would stand in white-faced silence as her reign ended before it could truly begin. In 60 televised seconds, she became a relic of a crown she would never wear again. It was a coup not of soldiers but of signatures, of intelligence briefings and whispered decrees, yet its violence was no less shattering. For the monarchy, it was survival. For Camilla, it was devastation written across her face, replayed endlessly on screens across the globe, a symbol of loss etched into royal history forever. Charles's voice carried a weight that silenced the room. "William, Catherine, sit down," he said, his tone grave, almost breaking. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything for our family." The words seemed to hang in the air like a thundercloud. William felt his heart pound in his chest as his father laid bare the reality. A security crisis that threatened the monarchy itself, a situation so dire that the only solution was abdication, immediate and final. For a moment, William could hardly breathe. It felt like someone else's life was being decided, not his. "You're asking me to become king today," he finally said, voice low and stunned. Charles met his gaze. "I'm asking you to save the monarchy. You have the people's trust in a way I never did. Only you can do this." Catherine's hand gripped William's arm tightly, trembling. At 41, she had prepared for queenship, yes, but decades in the future, not tonight. She thought of their children, their life that until now balanced duty and normalcy. Overnight, that delicate balance would be shattered. William's mind flashed to Camilla. "What about her?" he asked. Charles's face darkened further. "That's the cruelest part. She's devastated. 2 decades spent building her role, only for it to vanish in a single day." What followed was chaos, a whirlwind of emergency briefings and unprecedented constitutional maneuvers. Lawyers rushed in with crash courses on abdication laws and succession protocol. William was drilled on oaths and procedures with military precision. Everything that usually unfolded over months now had to be executed in hours. The monarchy's survival depended on secrecy and speed. The grand coronation would come later. For now, only the essentials mattered: the oath, recognition, and investiture of power. Palace staff moved like shadows, preparing the throne room for an emergency ceremony as networks across the nation received cryptic alerts. A major royal announcement was imminent. Catherine was swept into her own storm. While William learned the sacred words he must speak without fault, she was handed hastily chosen attire to serve as her coronation gown. Her private secretary scrambled to wipe her calendar clean and prepare her for an avalanche of new duties. Yet the hardest moment wasn't the lawyers or the dress fittings, it was telling their children. George, just 10, looked up at his mother, fear in his eyes. "Will we still live at home?" he asked. Catherine forced a smile. "Yes, darling. Some things will change, but we'll still be a family." She wasn't sure if it was true, but she had to believe it. Charlotte, ever practical at 8, worried if her father would still help with her homework. William crouched down, his voice heavy with promise. "Papa will always make time for what matters." And little Louis, oblivious to the gravity, simply asked if this meant he would finally be a prince. None of them could yet comprehend that their lives had been rewritten in fire. In another wing of the palace, Camilla was drowning in quiet despair. Her private sitting room, once a sanctuary, had become a prison. Every portrait, every invitation, every symbol of her hard-won title mocked her with finality. For 20 years she had fought against scorn, clawed her way to acceptance, and finally stood as queen consort. Now, before the crown had even warmed, it was being torn from her. Her lady-in-waiting, Philippa Morrison, found her staring at the gardens, silent tears cutting through her composure. "Your Majesty, the ceremony will begin in 2 hours. Shall I help you prepare?" Camilla turned, her eyes red. "Prepare for what? To watch my stepson take the throne while everything I've built turns to ash? To smile as if this isn't the death of everything I fought for?" Philippa tried to soothe her, but Camilla's bitterness cut through. "Do you see the irony? For years they told me I was essential to this family's stability. They fought for me. And now those same forces demand I vanish, so Diana's son can be their savior. Was I ever really meant to be here? Or was I always just a shadow they tolerated until they could replace me with the memory of her?" The name Diana lingered in the air like a ghost. Even in death, Diana's presence was inescapable. The public's eternal queen of hearts versus Camilla, who had fought to prove her worth. And now William, Diana's golden son, would step forward to save the monarchy, while she slipped back into obscurity. Straightening her spine, she whispered, "I must dress. They will not see me fall." Buckingham Palace was a hive of urgency. The throne room had been transformed in record time, draped in crimson and gold, cameras poised like watchful eyes. Parliamentarians, clergy, and Commonwealth representatives filed in, summoned without explanation, sensing history unfolding. William stood in a small chamber beside the hall, his new robes heavy on his shoulders. The Archbishop of Canterbury approached, voice solemn. "Are you ready, sir?" William nodded, steady though his soul shook. "As ready as one can ever be." Beside him, Catherine appeared, regal even in her hastily chosen navy dress. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with steel. In less than an hour, William would ascend as King of the United Kingdom and 15 realms beyond. Catherine would step into the furnace as Queen. Their children's innocence had already been sacrificed on the altar of duty. And in another room, Camilla fastened her gown with trembling hands, determined not to let the world see the crack in her armor. The monarchy was about to be reforged in fire, and none of their lives would ever be the same again. "Together," she whispered, offering her hand, her voice trembling with urgency. "Together," William answered, his fingers intertwining with hers in a silent pact. The great doors of the throne room swung open, creaking under the weight of history, and they stepped forward into destiny. The air inside was electric, heavy with centuries of tradition colliding with the chaos of the present moment. Rows of dignitaries rose to their feet, their eyes fixed on the pair, while television cameras captured every deliberate step, beaming the spectacle across the globe to millions who were just realizing the monarchy itself was shifting before their eyes. King Charles sat beside the throne, cloaked in his full ceremonial regalia for what everyone knew would be the final time. His face bore the strain of a man at war with himself, dignified resignation etched into every line, yet shadowed by the grief of surrender. And then, like a phantom draped in power and loss, sat Camilla in the front row. She wore deep purple, a shade that whispered both sovereignty and mourning. Her flawless presentation could not conceal the tension in her shoulders or the faint tremor in her hands as she clutched her purse like a weapon against the storm about to consume her. The Archbishop's voice cut through the silence, ringing with authority and sorrow. He framed the day's catastrophe as an act of sacrifice, not weakness. "We gather today in exceptional circumstances," he declared, the words rolling across the chamber and beyond into millions of homes. "His Majesty King Charles III has chosen to place the welfare of the realm above personal consideration, passing the sacred trust of kingship to his son and heir." It was a script of duty, but the weight behind it was crisis. The cameras sought Camilla's face as the words of abdication were read. Slowly, her carefully composed mask cracked. Her skin drained of color, her lips parted in disbelief, and her eyes widened with the horror of watching her reign dissolve phrase by phrase. The climax arrived with Charles's voice, steady yet mournful. "I do solemnly and sincerely abdicate and renounce for myself and my heirs the throne of the United Kingdom." The words detonated in the chamber. Camilla's face went ghostly white. The cameras caught her devastation in merciless detail, her anguish broadcast across the world. This was no longer politics or protocol. It was a woman's private heartbreak, dragged into the relentless spotlight of history. The ceremony moved with chilling precision, the centuries-old machinery of abdication unfolding like a blade. Charles signed the documents that severed him from the throne he had waited 73 years to claim. Each stroke of the pen cut another thread from Camilla's fragile grasp on power. His voice wavered only slightly as he invoked God's blessing on his son, but the hall seemed to tremble with the enormity of the moment. The silence of the witnesses, prime ministers, generals, Commonwealth leaders, bishops, and royals, was deafening. The entire world was watching a dynasty fracture in real time. Camilla's unraveling became the story within the story. She swayed in her seat, steadied discreetly by Dame Philippa, her face a pale mask of ruin against the purple silk of her dress. Her trembling hands betrayed what she tried desperately to hide. The woman who had clawed her way to the top of the monarchy now watched it all torn away in a matter of minutes. Then came the blow that shattered her composure entirely, William's oath. The Archbishop asked, "Will you solemnly promise and swear to govern the peoples of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, your other realms and territories according to their respective laws and customs?" William's reply thundered, "I solemnly promise so to do." Resolute, unyielding. The boy she had once known as a teenager was now a king before her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek. She tried to erase it quickly, but the cameras were merciless. The image of her grief would live forever. Then came the crown. Stripped of spectacle, reduced to raw symbolism, the coronation was a swift and merciless act. At 41, William Arthur Philip Louis became King William V. The chamber erupted with the cry, "God save the King!" Voices echoed like cannon fire. Catherine's eyes betrayed a flicker of strain, but she held her composure. Camilla, however, sat paralyzed. No longer queen consort, no longer the second most powerful woman in the kingdom, but merely the wife of a former king. The aftermath erupted like a battlefield. Palace officials scrambled to manage the chaos, television networks around the globe cut into regular programming, and reporters clashed for control of the story. William's first act as king was to speak to his nation from the very room where the crown had passed. His voice, calm yet commanding, reassured the world. "My father's decision was made in the best interests of our nation and Commonwealth. I accept this sacred trust with humility and resolve." His words promised continuity, but they were forged in crisis. Camilla, shielded by ladies-in-waiting, remained frozen. Her life's work, her ascension, her acceptance, her reign, was gone. The engagements, the charities, the staff, the influence, all would be stripped away, reassigned, dissolved. She had fought for decades to sit at the pinnacle of monarchy, and in a single afternoon she was thrust back into the shadows. Meanwhile, Catherine's elevation came like a tidal wave. Unlike Camilla's slow, hard-won climb, Catherine had been thrust into queenship without warning. Her private secretary whispered of new responsibilities, new expectations, new burdens, yet Catherine's gaze stayed locked on William. She knew that in one afternoon, their family's future had been rewritten, their children's lives forever altered. Beyond the palace, shock rippled through the world. Leaders scrambled to respond, constitutional experts filled television studios, and social media roared with disbelief. The hashtag Camilla's heartbreak dominated global feeds, as millions debated whether to pity or condemn the woman now stripped of power. 6 months later, the dust had settled. William proved himself a strong, modern monarch, while Catherine embraced her new duties with poise. The security crisis that had triggered Charles's abdication was quietly resolved through diplomacy and intelligence. But for Camilla, the fall never ended. Her purple dress, her pale face, her single tear, those images remained etched in collective memory, a haunting reminder of the day the crown shifted with the speed of a sword strike, cutting her legacy in half. The monarchy had survived the storm, but the scars on King Charles's reign were permanent. History would mark him as the king who sacrificed ambition for the survival of the crown. No longer burdened by the throne, Charles adjusted to life as a former monarch with surprising calm, throwing himself into charities and environmental causes. The weight of sovereignty gone, he appeared lighter, almost unrecognizable from the man once haunted by the crown's crushing expectations. But where Charles found peace, Camilla only found despair. For her, the fall was brutal. From queen consort to nothing in a single night, the collapse of a lifetime's pursuit. She had poured her soul into her role, carving out influence, building alliances, and finally earning the respect denied to her for decades. Then, in an instant, it was gone. Invitations stopped, her calendar emptied, and the spotlight she had fought to share now blazed on Queen Catherine. In private, Camilla confessed to Dame Philippa, "I do not know who I am any more." 20 years climbing toward the crown, 2 years wearing it, and now she stood stripped of purpose. Her pale face during the emergency coronation became an image etched into public memory, a queen watching her crown slip away. Strangely, it stirred sympathy. People saw not just a royal fall from grace but a woman undone by fate. William worked quietly to preserve her dignity, ensuring she appeared at family events beside Charles. But her presence carried no weight, her work no longer shaped the monarchy's path. Meanwhile, Catherine's rise was seamless. With grace and resolve, she stepped into the role as though destiny had written her name in gold. The monarchy regained strength under William and Catherine, but for Camilla, the anniversary of that coronation remained a wound, a reminder that crowns can vanish in seconds, and legacies can collapse in silence. The monarchy may have regained its footing, but the echoes of that night still haunt those who lived it. Camilla's fall stands as a stark reminder of how fragile power can be, how years of struggle can vanish in a heartbeat, leaving only silence where ambition once roared. Her story is not just about royalty, but about the human cost of losing everything you fought for. And as history continues to unfold, one truth remains. In the world of crowns and thrones, nothing is ever certain. What would you do if everything you worked for disappeared in a single moment? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, and subscribe for more untold royal stories where truth, power, and fate collide.